Captain James Miller stood at the viewport of Waypoint 37, staring into the endless dark of space. The small frontier outpost hung at the edge of human territory, a lonely sentinel watching the stars. Most officers saw assignment here as punishment, but Miller had requested it. Out here, away from the bustle of the Central Worlds, he could pursue his true passion. "Captain, you've got another package," said Lieutenant Davis, dropping a small container on Miller's desk. "All the way from Earth this time." Miller turned from the viewport, his weathered face brightening. "Finally. I've been waiting months for this." He opened the package carefully, revealing an old metal badge. To most, it would look like junk, a piece of scrap. But to Miller, it was treasure. The faded insignia of the 3rd Deep Space Fleet, active during the Vraxian War 3 centuries ago. "Another addition to your collection of fairy tales?" Davis asked with a smirk. Miller didn't take offense. The younger officers always mocked his hobby. "History, Lieutenant, not fairy tales." "The Retribution is a myth, sir. Every Academy cadet knows that." Miller picked up the badge, feeling its weight. "That's what they teach now, yes. But myths often have roots in truth." The story of the Retribution was known to every child who dreamed of the stars. During the darkest days of the war against the lizard-like Vraxians, humanity built a superweapon, a battleship unlike any other. It was said to be the size of a small moon, carrying weapons that could destroy planets. In the old stories, the Retribution fought a final battle against the enemy fleet, and both disappeared, never to be seen again. Official history called it propaganda, invented to boost morale when humanity was losing the war. But Miller had spent 20 years collecting evidence suggesting otherwise. "Messages for you, Captain," called the communications officer. "One from your wife, and another, strange one." "Strange how?" Miller asked, walking to the communications station. "It came through on an old frequency. Very old, and it's repeating." Miller leaned over the console, feeling his heart beat faster as he saw the signal pattern. "This frequency hasn't been used since the war." "What war?" asked the young officer. "The Vraxian War. Before the peace treaty." Miller studied the signal. "Can you clean it up?" After several minutes of work, the static resolved into a clear pattern. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. An ancient distress code. "Where is it coming from?" Miller asked. The officer checked his instruments. "The dead zone, sir. Grid 19-7. The dead zone, a region of space avoided by all ships due to strange sensor readings and rumors of vanished vessels. Miller had always wondered what secrets it held. "Sir," said Commander Alex Taylor, Miller's second-in-command, "you're not thinking of investigating that signal, are you?" Miller was already walking toward the command center. "I'm not just thinking about it, Alex. I'm doing it." Taylor followed, lowering her voice. "With all due respect, sir, that's crazy. The dead zone is off-limits for good reason. And this signal is probably just interference." 333 is not random interference," Miller replied. "Someone set that signal to repeat, and it matches accounts from my research." Taylor sighed. She was a good officer, practical, and by the book. She had served with Miller for 5 years and respected him, but his obsession with the Retribution was the one thing that worried her. "Sir, even if, and that's a big if, there's something there, we need authorization from command." Miller nodded. "I'll request it immediately." 3 hours later, Miller stood before the holographic images of 3 admirals. He had presented his case, showing the signal and its match to historical records. "Captain Miller," said Admiral Grant, "your request to investigate is denied. Waypoint 37 is a monitoring station, not an exploration vessel." "Admiral, this could be the greatest historical find of our time," Miller argued. "It could also be nothing," said Admiral Wong. "Or worse, a trap. The Vraxians may be our allies now, but there are still rogue elements who remember the war." Miller tried one more approach. "What if it is the Retribution? The technology on that ship would be centuries ahead of even our current level. We can't let that fall into the wrong hands." The admirals exchanged looks. Miller had touched on their real fear. "Very well," said Admiral Grant finally. "You may take a small team to investigate, but at the first sign of danger, you withdraw. Is that clear?" "Perfectly clear, Admiral. Thank you." As the transmission ended, Miller found Taylor waiting. "We're going, aren't we?" she asked. "We leave in 6 hours. Prepare a team. 5 security officers and 2 engineers." "This is a mistake," Taylor said, but she was already mentally selecting the crew. Miller returned to his quarters and opened a locked drawer in his desk. Inside was his most prized possession, a handwritten journal supposedly from a survivor of the Retribution's last battle. Most experts had called it a fake, but Miller had always believed. He opened it to a dog-eared page and read the familiar words. "Should anyone find this account, know that we did not fall in battle. We were betrayed. The ship lives, though damaged beyond repair. We sleep now, in the cold between stars, but we will return, and we will have our revenge." Miller closed the journal. For 20 years, he had searched for proof that the Retribution was real. Now, he might finally find it. 6 hours later, their small ship left waypoint 37, heading toward the dead zone. As they approached the coordinates, sensor readings became erratic. "Something's interfering with our systems," reported the engineer. "Keep going," ordered Miller. Taylor looked nervous. "Sir, if our sensors fail completely, we'll be blind out here." "Sometimes you have to trust more than sensors, Commander." As they pushed deeper into the zone, a massive shape began to appear on their view screen. Just a shadow at first, blocking the stars. But as they drew closer, the outline became clear. A ship, the largest any of them had ever seen. Old and battle-scared, but unmistakably human in design. "My God," whispered Taylor, her doubts evaporating. "It's real." Miller stared at the massive vessel, emotion tightening his throat. There, emblazoned on the hull in faded letters, was the name he had searched for his entire career. Rewritten. "Not just real," Miller said quietly. "It's alive." As if in response to his words, lights began to flicker along the ancient battleship's hull, waking after centuries of darkness. "Approach with caution," Miller ordered as their small scout ship edged closer to the massive battleship. The Retribution hung in space like a sleeping giant, its hull scarred with the marks of ancient battles. "No response to our hails," reported Lieutenant Davis from the communications station. "If there's anyone alive in there, they're not talking." Commander Taylor studied the sensor readings, her earlier skepticism replaced by professional concern. "The ship's power systems are active, but minimal. Life support appears to be functioning in some sections, but at very low levels." Miller couldn't take his eyes off the view screen. The Retribution was even more impressive than the stories described. Nearly 2 kilometers long, with weapon ports that could house cannons bigger than their entire scout ship. This was a vessel built for one purpose: to end a war. "I'm detecting a docking bay on the starboard side," said Officer Wilson, their pilot. "The doors are partially open. We could slip inside." "Do it," Miller said. "Slow approach, no sudden movements. If that ship's defense systems are still active, we don't want to trigger them." Their scout ship glided toward the ancient battleship, passing through the partially open bay doors into a cavernous hangar. Emergency lights flickered dimly, casting long shadows across rows of fighter craft, designs no one had seen in centuries. "These ships are perfectly preserved," Taylor whispered, awe evident in her voice. "Look at the technology. It's nothing like our historical records." When they landed, Miller divided the team. "Taylor, you and Davis check the bridge. Wilson, take the engineers to the engine room. I want to know what's keeping this ship powered after all this time. The rest of you come with me to find the crew quarters." They sealed their environment suits. The air aboard the Retribution might be toxic after centuries, and entered the silent corridors of the legendary Battleship. Miller led his team through hallways that seemed to stretch forever. Unlike the smooth white corridors of modern ships, the Retribution's passages were industrial, built for war rather than comfort. Occasionally, they passed signs of battle, scorch marks on walls, sections where emergency bulkheads had sealed off breaches. "Captain, look at this," said Security Officer Patel, pointing to a sealed door marked CRYOB1. Miller's heart raced. The journal he'd read had mentioned the crew entering cryosleep. "Can we get this open?" The team's engineer, Dr. Foster, examined the control panel. "It's an old system, but I think I can bypass it." After a few minutes, she announced, "Got it." The door slid open with a hiss of escaping air. Inside was a large chamber filled with rows of cryopods, each containing a human form. Frost covered the transparent tops, making it difficult to see the faces within. "Are they alive?" Patel asked. Foster checked a still-functioning terminal. "According to this, yes. The pods are all in working order. These people have been in suspended animation for over 300 years." Miller approached the nearest pod, wiping away the frost to reveal the face of a young officer, his expression peaceful in frozen sleep. "They survived," he whispered. "All this time, they were here, waiting." Miller's radio crackled. "Captain, this is Taylor. We've reached the bridge. You need to see this." 20 minutes later, Miller stood on the bridge of the Retribution, staring at holographic displays that shouldn't have been possible with the technology of that era. "The ship's AI is still functioning," Taylor explained. "It's been running on minimal power, maintaining life support for the cryobase and watching for something." "Can we communicate with it?" Miller asked. "We've been trying, but it's not responding fully. I think it's defensive. It doesn't recognize us." As if in response to her words, the holographic displays flickered, and a computerized voice spoke. "Unidentified personnel detected. Security protocols engage. Identify yourselves or face defensive measures." Miller stepped forward. "I am Captain James Miller of the Human Alliance starship Waypoint 37. We are human, like the crew of this vessel. Genetic verification required." The AI responded. A beam of light scanned each of them. Human genetic patterns confirmed, but uniforms and equipment do not match records. Temporal anomaly detected. Current stardate verification required. Miller gave the date according to the standard calendar. There was a long pause. Then, data indicates a temporal displacement of 327 standard years, awaiting command authorization to proceed. "We don't have command authorization," Taylor said quietly. "We're not from their time." Miller thought quickly. "Computer, we are descendants of the human forces you were designed to serve. We detected your distress signal and came to investigate." Another pause. "Partial access granted. Critical systems remain locked. Full access requires command-level authorization from Captain Thomas Reed or designated successor." The holographic displays change, showing detailed scans of the ship. Most systems were damaged, but the ship's core functions and its weapons were intact. "Look at this technology," Dr. Foster said in awe, examining the displays. "Some of these systems are beyond anything we have even now." "How is that possible?" "The history books got it wrong," Miller said. "The Retribution wasn't just propaganda. It was real. And it was far more advanced than anyone knew." As they studied the displays, Wilson's voice came over the radio. "Captain, we've reached the engine room. You won't believe what we found. This ship isn't powered by standard fusion drives. It's something else entirely, something I've never seen before." "Document everything," Miller ordered. "But don't touch anything yet." As Miller spoke, the bridge lights suddenly brightened, and warning signals flashed across the displays. "What's happening?" Taylor asked. The AI's voice returned, now more urgent. "Warning. Defensive systems activating. Unknown entities attempting access to secure areas. Security protocols engage. There's someone else on board, Miller realized. Computer, identify the unknown entities. Unable to comply. Sensor systems damage. Threat assessment. High. Activating remaining defensive protocols. Throughout the ship, emergency barriers began to close. Lights shifted to a deep red alert status. Everyone back to the ship now, Miller ordered. As they rushed back through the corridors, Miller heard mechanical sounds ahead, the whir of servos and the heavy tread of metal on metal. Down, he shouted, pulling Taylor behind a bulkhead just as a security drone rounded the corner. It was humanoid in shape but clearly mechanical, armed with weapons built into its arms. The drone paused, its sensors scanning the corridor. Miller held his breath, praying their environment suits would mask their heat signatures. After what seemed like an eternity, the drone moved on, continuing its patrol. The AI doesn't fully trust us, Taylor whispered. It's treating us as potential threats. We need to find a way to communicate with it properly, Miller said. And we need to wake someone who can give us the command authorization. They made it back to the hangar bay, where the rest of the team was already waiting at their ship. What do we do now, Captain? Taylor asked as they sealed the hatch. Miller looked back at the silent corridors of the Retribution, feeling the weight of history around him. We need to gain its trust, and to do that, we need to learn exactly what happened to this ship and why it's been waiting for 300 years. As their scout ship prepared to leave the hangar, the AI's voice came through their communications system one more time. Warning to unidentified human personnel. The Retribution awakens. Our mission continues. Revenge will be ours. Miller exchanged glances with Taylor. Whatever happened to this ship and its crew, he said quietly, they think they were betrayed. And they've been waiting a very long time to settle the score. Captain Miller sat in the small conference room aboard their scout ship, facing his team. The Retribution loomed outside their viewport, silent and threatening. We need a plan, Miller said. That ship is a historical treasure, but its AI sees us as potential enemies. Commander Taylor nodded, and it mentioned revenge. Revenge against whom? The war with the Vraxians ended centuries ago. Lieutenant Davis, who had been analyzing the limited data they gathered, spoke up. Captain, I've been reviewing the ship's communication logs that we were able to access. The last entries mention a battle, but not against Vraxians. Not against Vraxians. Miller leaned forward. Then against whom? Other humans, Davis said quietly. There are references to traitors and collaborators. The room fell silent as they absorbed this information. The history of the Vraxian War taught that humanity had united against a common enemy. The idea of human betrayal during that desperate time was shocking. We need more information, Miller decided. And there's only one way to get it. We need to wake someone up. Sir, that's extremely risky, Dr. Foster warned. Those people have been in cryosleep for over 3 centuries. The medical complications alone. I understand the risks, Miller interrupted. But we need answers, and we need someone who can command that eye. After much debate, they agreed on a plan. They would return to the Retribution with medical equipment and attempt to revive the ship's commander, who would likely have the highest authorization level. Hours later, they docked once again with the ancient battleship. This time, the AI did not immediately activate defensive measures, seemingly having assessed they weren't an immediate threat. Computer, Miller called out as they re-entered the ship, we wish to communicate with your commander. We need to revive Captain Reed from cryosleep. There was a long pause before the AI responded. Authorization insufficient for full revival protocols. However, limited communication may be established. Follow illuminated path to Command Cryobay. Lights flickered on along the corridor floor, creating a path deeper into the ship than they had ventured before. It's cooperating, Taylor said, sounding surprised. Why the change? Maybe it's had time to analyze us, Miller suggested. Or maybe it's just curious. They followed the lights to a smaller cryobay marked Command STFF. Inside were just 5 pods, more elaborate than the ones they had seen earlier. The central pod bore the name Admiral Thomas Reed, Fleet Commander. Admiral Taylor Reed. The stories always called him Captain. Miller approached the pod. "Computer, we request communication with Admiral Reed." "Initiating limited revival protocol," the AI announced. "Warning: full revival not authorized. Temporary consciousness only." The pod hummed to life. Frost melted away from the transparent cover, revealing the face of a man in his 50s, with a strong jaw and deep lines around his eyes. The pod opened with a hiss, and Reed's eyes fluttered. Dr. Foster rushed forward with her medical scanner. Vital signs stabilizing. Brain activity increasing. "He's waking up." Admiral Reed's eyes opened fully, focusing slowly on the faces above him. He tried to speak, but his voice was barely a whisper after centuries of disuse. "Water," Foster said, and Davis quickly provided a small cup with a straw. After a few sips, Reed found his voice. "Who are you?" "You're not my crew." Miller stepped forward. "Admiral Reed, I'm Captain James Miller of the Human Alliance. We found your ship adrift and followed your distress signal." Reed's eyes narrowed. "Human Alliance. What happened to the Federation?" Miller exchanged glances with Taylor. "Admiral, this may be difficult to hear, but you've been in cryosleep for a very long time. The year is 2752. Reed stared at them, then closed his eyes. 300 years, he whispered. "Computer, confirm." "Confirmed, Admiral. Current timestamp indicates 327 years, 4 months, 18 days since cryoprotocol initiation." Reed struggled to sit up, and Foster helped him. "The war? The Vraxians? The war ended 3 centuries ago," Miller said gently. "We've been at peace with the Vraxians for generations." Reed's face hardened. "Peace with those monsters. After what they did." "History records that both sides were exhausted by the conflict," Taylor explained. "A treaty was signed. The Vraxians retreated to their territory, and humanity rebuilt." "And the traitors?" Reed asked. "What happened to those who betrayed us?" Miller hesitated. "Admiral, our history doesn't mention any betrayal. The retribution is barely a footnote, a propaganda story created to boost morale." Reed laughed, a harsh sound. "Propaganda. Is that what they call us? The greatest warship ever built, with a crew of 15,000, and they erased us from history." "What really happened, Admiral?" Miller asked. "Why did the retribution disappear?" Reed's eyes burned with old anger. "We didn't disappear. We were betrayed. Sabotage. By our own people, high-ranking officials who made secret deals with the Vraxians." He gestured weakly around him. "This ship was humanity's last hope. We had technology decades ahead of anything else, weapons that could end the war in one decisive strike. But the night before our final mission, saboteurs struck. They damaged our main drive, our weapons systems." Reed's voice grew stronger as he spoke. "We managed to escape, but we were crippled. I made the decision to hide in this sector and put the crew in cryosleep while the automated systems repaired what they could. We left a distress signal that only true allies would recognize." Miller pulled out his old journal. "Someone did. A survivor. They wrote this." Reed's eyes widened as he recognized the book. "Lieutenant Park. I ordered her to take our last shuttle, to tell the truth about what happened. They let her live. The journal was dismissed as a fake," Miller explained. "But I always believed." Reed closed his eyes again, processing everything. "And now we're relics of a forgotten war." "Not forgotten," Miller said. "Misunderstood. Admiral, your ship contains technology that's still advanced by our standards. How is that possible?" Reed smiled faintly. "Project Prometheus. Our scientists made breakthroughs. Quantum computing, advanced AI, energy weapons beyond anything we'd had before. The Retribution wasn't just a battleship. It was a leap forward for humanity." A leap that was buried, Taylor said thoughtfully. If traitors really did betray you to the Vraxians, then they wouldn't want evidence of their betrayal floating around. Miller finished. They'd want the retribution forgotten. Reed tried to rise from the pod but was too weak. I need to see what's become of the world. My crew, can they be revived? With time and proper medical facilities, yes, Foster said. But not all at once, and not here. Admiral, Miller said carefully, you mentioned revenge earlier. Through your ship's eye. Revenge against whom? The traitors are long dead. Reed's expression darkened. Are they? Computer, full system activation. Authorization. Reed, Thomas J. Admiral, Federation ID 9275 Alpha. Around them, the ship hummed as systems that had been dormant for centuries came online. Lights brightened throughout the vessel. Full access granted, the AI announced. All systems online. Welcome back, Admiral Reed. Show me the Vraxian Empire, current configuration, Reed ordered. A holographic display appeared, showing a map of known space. The Vraxian territory glowed red, much larger than Miller had expected. That's not right, Taylor said, studying the map. The treaty limited their expansion. This shows they've doubled their territory. Reed nodded grimly. The betrayal continues. Computer, show military buildup in Vraxian space over the last 50 years. The display changed, revealing massive fleet movements and weapons installations, all hidden just beyond standard scanning range. Miller stared at the data in shock. They've been preparing for war this entire time. But our intelligence never detected this. Because someone didn't want you to see it, Reed said. The descendants of those who betrayed us. They are still protecting their Vraxian masters. He locked eyes with Miller. Now do you understand? The revenge isn't just for what happened 3 centuries ago. It's to stop what's about to happen now. Which is what? Taylor asked. Reed's voice was cold. The final elimination of humanity. The plan they'd been working toward all along. Captain Miller stood in the Retribution's massive command center, watching as Admiral Reed, now stronger after medical treatment, paced before the holographic displays. In the 12 hours since Reed's revival, the ancient battleship had come fully to life, systems humming with power that shouldn't have been possible after centuries of dormancy. These readings can't be right, Commander Taylor said, studying the data on Vraxian military strength. Our intelligence reports show their fleet at 1/5 this size. Your intelligence is compromised, Reed said flatly, just as ours was before the betrayal. He turned to Miller. Captain, you said humans and Vraxians have been at peace for centuries. What's the current state of human defenses? Miller hesitated before answering. Most of our military budget was cut decades ago. We maintain a defense fleet, but nothing like what we had during the war. Most of our ships are exploratory or scientific vessels now. Reed's face darkened. Perfect conditions for an invasion. Dr. Foster, who had been monitoring Reed's vitals, looked troubled. Admiral, with all due respect, is it possible your perspective is colored by your experiences? 300 years have passed. Perhaps the Vraxians have changed. Reed smiled without humor. Doctor, have you ever met a Vraxian? Yes, Foster replied. The medical exchange program has several Vraxian doctors. I've worked with them. And did they tell you about their life cycle? About the Great Molting? Foster looked confused. They're private about their biology. For good reason, Reed said. Every 75 years, their species undergoes a biological transformation. Their current forms, the ones walking among you as Alice, are just one phase. During the Great Molting, they change, become more aggressive, more predatory. He turned to the holographic display. Computer, show historical records of the Vraxian life cycle, classified file Read 7. The display changed to show biological scans of Vraxian physiology, revealing a transformation that turned the relatively humanoid aliens into something far more terrifying. larger with enhanced musculature, thicker armor-like skin, and more pronounced predatory features. "This is what we faced in the war," Reed explained, "not the diplomats you know today. And according to my calculations, they're due for another great molting within the next 5 years." The implications hung heavy in the air. "They've been building their military while in their peaceful phase," Miller said slowly, "preparing for when they transform, and positioning themselves throughout human space." Reed added, "Tell me, Captain, how many Vraxians live among humans now?" "Millions," Taylor answered. "They have embassies, cultural centers, and exchange programs on almost every major world." Reed nodded grimly. "Sleeper agents, all of them. When the molting comes, they'll strike from within while their main fleet attacks from without." Lieutenant Davis, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "If what you're saying is true, Admiral, we need to alert the Alliance immediately." "And say what?" Taylor asked. "That a 300-year-old admiral from a ship that's supposed to be a myth tells us our allies are planning to exterminate us. They'll think we've lost our minds." "We need proof," Miller said. "Hard evidence of Vraxian intentions." Reed moved to a secure console and entered a complex series of commands. "During our last mission, we collected intelligence from deep within Vraxian space, information about their long-term plans. The data was one reason they sabotaged us. They knew we had discovered their true intentions." The screen displayed ancient files, encoded in a format no longer used. "Can you decode these?" Miller asked. Reed nodded. "Computer, decode files using Prometheus algorithm. Authorization read Omega 9. As the files began to decrypt, the ship's sensors suddenly blared an alert. "Proximity warning," announced the AI. "Vessel approaching. Configuration matches Vraxian scout class." "They found us," Taylor said, moving to a tactical display. "How?" "We were careful with our approach." Reed's expression hardened. "They'd been watching this sector all along. They never stopped looking for us." "We need to leave," Davis urged. "Return to Alliance space and report what we found." Reed shook his head. "The Retribution isn't fully operational yet. We'd never outrun them." He turned to Miller. "Captain, your ship could escape. Take the data we've decoded and return to your command." Miller studied the tactical display, noting the Vraxian ship's approach vector. "They'd catch us before we reached the jump point. Besides, I'm not leaving the Retribution to be captured again." Reed seemed to reach a decision. "Then we fight. Computer, activate defensive systems. Prepare to engage." "Weapons systems at 40% capacity," the AI reported. "Full combat capabilities not recommended." "Admiral," Miller cautioned, "we're not at war with the Vraxians. Firing on their ship would violate the treaty." "A treaty they've been violating for centuries," Reed countered. "But I take your point. Let's see what they want first." The communication system activated, and a Vraxian face appeared on the main screen. Unlike the relatively benign appearance of modern Vraxian diplomats, this one had harder features. A military officer, his scales darker and ridge more pronounced. "Attention human vessel," the Vraxian said in perfect common. "You have entered restricted space. Power down and prepare to be boarded." "Restricted by whose authority?" Miller asked. "This sector is neutral territory under the Treaty of Armstrong." The Vraxian's eyes narrowed. "Your vessel has been detected interfacing with a derelict warship containing restricted technology. By order of the Vraxian Protectorate, we are confiscating this derelict." Reed stepped forward, into view of the communication panel. "This ship is under my command, Vraxian. It is not derelict, and you have no authority here." The Vraxian officer's expression changed to one of shock as he recognized Reed. "Impossible. You should be dead." "As you can see, I'm very much alive," Reed replied coldly. "As is the Retribution." The Vraxian recovered quickly. "Admiral Reed, your ship was reported destroyed over 3 centuries ago." "Reported by whom?" "The traitors who tried to sabotage us." or your government, which helped them. A tense silence followed. Then the Vraxians' posture changed, becoming more formal. Admiral Reed, the war ended long ago. We are at peace with humans now. Allow us to escort you back to Alliance space, where historians will be eager to speak with you. Reed laughed harshly. And scientists eager to dissect my ship's technology? I think not. The Vraxian's voice hardened. That ship contains weapons in violation of treaty agreements. It must be surrendered. How interesting that you know what weapons this ship contains, Reed noted, when according to history, the Retribution never existed beyond propaganda. The Vraxian officer's composure slipped briefly. We have detailed records. Of a ship you claimed never existed, Miller interrupted, seeing the trap Reed had laid. You've been monitoring this sector, waiting for the Retribution to reappear, which means you knew it was here all along. The Vraxian's face showed cold anger now. You have 1 hour to surrender the vessel, or we will take it by force. The communication ended abruptly. That went well, Taylor said dryly. Reed turned to Miller. Now do you believe me, Captain? They feared the Retribution's return for centuries. Miller nodded slowly. But one Vraxian scout ship isn't much of a threat, even with our systems at partial power. That's not their real threat, Reed said, pointing to the tactical display. Look at their position. They're maintaining distance, just beyond our weapon range. Taylor understood first. They're stalling, waiting for reinforcements. Exactly, Reed confirmed. And when their battle fleet arrives, we'll be outnumbered. Miller made his decision. Then we need to act now. Admiral, can this ship still fight? The Retribution was built to face an entire Vraxian fleet, Reed said, a fierce light in his eyes. One scout ship. We'll show them why they feared us for 3 centuries. He turned to the command console. Computer, target Vraxian vessel. Prepare to fire warning shot. Let's remind them who they're dealing with. As the Retribution's weapon systems came online, the massive ship trembled with power that had lain dormant for centuries. Weapon charge, reported the AI. Target locked. Reed looked at Miller, seeking confirmation. This would be an act of war. But war, Miller now realized, had never truly ended. Miller nodded. Fire. A beam of energy, unlike anything in modern weapon systems, lanced out from the Retribution, passing just meters from the Vraxian ship's hull. The scout vessel immediately began evasive maneuvers. Message sent, Reed said with grim satisfaction. Now we prepare for their response. As if on cue, the tactical display lit up with new contacts. Dozens of them, emerging from jump points on the edge of the system. That's not a response, Miller said, staring at the display. That's an invasion fleet. The command center of the Retribution fell silent as everyone stared at the tactical display. Dozens of Vraxian warships were moving into attack formation, their weapons signatures flaring as they powered up. That's a full battle fleet, Taylor whispered. They were waiting just outside the system. Admiral Reed studied the enemy ships with a trained eye. Interesting. Their ship designs have changed, but their attack formations remain the same. He pointed to the display. Look how they position their heavy cruisers at these points. Classic Vraxian encirclement strategy. Miller felt a chill. They were prepared for this. For us. Of course they were, Reed said, his voice hard. They feared the Retribution's return for centuries. Now we know why. They never stopped preparing for war. A communication alert sounded, and the main screen activated to show a different Vraxian, older, with elaborate markings on his scales that indicated high rank. I am High Commander Vex of the Vraxian Protectorate, the alien announced. You have fired upon our scout ship in violation of treaty agreements. Surrender immediately. Reed stepped forward. This is Admiral Thomas Reed of the Federation Battleship Retribution. Your forces have been building in violation of the treaty for decades. We will not surrender. The High Commander's face showed no surprise at seeing Reed. Admiral Reed, your reputation survived the centuries. As did your. misunderstandings about our intentions. There's no misunderstanding, Reed replied coldly. We have the evidence, your plans for the Great Molting, your strategic positioning throughout human space. You never intended peace. Vex's expression changed subtly. The humans of your time were not ready to understand our biology or our culture. Those who came after were more accommodating. You mean those who betrayed us, Reed said, who sabotaged my ship and erased us from history. A regrettable necessity, Vex responded. Your vessel represented a threat to peaceful coexistence. Miller stepped into view. And your fleet? Is that for peaceful coexistence too? Vex turned his attention to Miller. Captain, I suggest you and your crew leave the Retribution immediately. This matter predates your lifetime. There is no need for you to die over ancient history. Ancient history that's about to repeat itself, Miller replied. Your fleet proves everything Admiral Reed has said. Vex's patience visibly thinned. This is your final warning. Abandon that vessel, or we will destroy it, with you aboard. Reed cut the communication. He's stalling again, he said to Miller, giving their ships time to move into optimal firing positions. He turned to the weapons console. Computer, what's our combat status? Defensive shields at 68% capacity, the AI reported. Main weapons at 43%. Secondary systems online. Estimated combat effectiveness, 52% of optimal. Not ideal, Reed admitted, but we faced worse odds. Miller looked at his team. They hadn't signed up for this, a battle against overwhelming forces in a 300-year-old war. We should try to contact Alliance Command, he suggested. Tell them what's happening here. The Vraxians are jamming all outgoing communications, Davis reported from the communications station. We're cut off. Reed nodded grimly. They don't want evidence of their treachery reaching your government. He studied the tactical display again. We have one advantage they don't expect. What's that? Taylor asked. The Prometheus Protocol, Reed said. Computer, initiate Prometheus Protocol. Authorization, read Final Omega. Warning, the AI responded. Prometheus Protocol will redirect all power to experimental systems. Life support will be reduced to minimal levels in non-essential areas. Proceed. Confirmed, Reed said. Proceed. The lights dimmed briefly throughout the ship, then stabilized. On the tactical display, new weapon systems came online. Systems unlike anything Miller had seen before. What is this? He asked. The reason they feared us, Reed explained. Quantum phase weaponry. Technology that was decades ahead of its time. And apparently still is. He looked at Miller. This is what they tried to prevent us from using. What the traitors sabotage. The tactical display beeped urgently. Vraxian vessels firing, the AI announced. Evasive maneuvers, Reed ordered. Bring us about to heading 047. Prepare to return fire. The massive battleship moved with surprising grace for its size, turning to face the oncoming Vraxian fleet. Enemy weapons fire streaked toward them, bright lances of energy that would have torn apart a modern Alliance vessel. But when they struck the Retribution's shields, something unexpected happened. Instead of struggling under the attack, the shields actually brightened, seeming to absorb the energy. Shield capacity increasing to 75%. The AI reported. Energy absorption systems functioning. Reed smiled for the first time since his awakening. They've forgotten what the Retribution can do. Their weapons are actually making us stronger. That's impossible, Foster said, staring at the readings. Not impossible, Reed corrected. Just beyond your current science. The Prometheus project developed technology that could convert enemy weapons fire into usable energy. He turned to Miller. Now, Captain, shall we show them why they were right to fear us? Miller hesitated only briefly. If what Reed said was true, if the Vraxians had been planning humanity's destruction for centuries, then this wasn't just about revenge. It was about survival. Fire at will, Admiral, he ordered. Reed's fingers danced across the command console. Target their lead vessels. Fire main quantum phase cannon. The Retribution shuddered as its main weapon discharged. Not a beam of energy like conventional weapons, but a rippling distortion that crossed space almost instantly. When it reached the first Vraxian cruiser, the enemy ship simply came apart, its matter destabilizing at the quantum level. 3 more Vraxian ships suffered the same fate before the fleet scattered in panic, breaking their careful formation. "My God," Taylor whispered. "1 shot each." "Now they remember," Reed said, his voice quiet but intense. This is what they feared, a weapon they couldn't defend against. The Vraxian communication channel activated again. High Commander Vex's face showed controlled fury. "This proves everything we have maintained for centuries. Your species created a weapon of mass destruction. You forced us to take action." "You betrayed us first," Reed countered. "You planned our extinction while pretending to negotiate peace." "And now," Vex demanded, "will you destroy our entire fleet, reignite a war that ended generations ago?" Reed looked at Miller, leaving the decision to him. Miller stepped forward. "We don't want war, Commander. We want truth. Stand down your fleet and agree to immediate discussions with the Human Alliance about your treaty violations. Otherwise," he let the threat hang unspoken, gesturing to the destroyed Vraxian ships. Vex's scaled face showed calculation. "You are outnumbered. Your weapon is formidable, but our fleet can overwhelm you with concentrated fire." "Perhaps," Reed acknowledged. "But how many ships will you lose before that happens? Half your fleet? More?" He stepped closer to the screen. "And what happens when we release all our data to the Human Alliance? The evidence of your deception, your treaty violations, your plans for the Great Molting." Vex's eyes narrowed. "What do you propose?" As Captain Miller said, "Immediate discussions with the Human Alliance. Full disclosure of your military buildup and your plans. A new treaty, one with real verification this time." For a long moment, Vex was silent, clearly communicating with others off-screen. Finally, he turned back. "We will withdraw to the outer system and permit communications with your alliance. But the Retribution remains a prohibited weapon under existing treaties. It cannot be allowed to operate freely." "The Retribution will be placed under Alliance control," Miller said. "Its technology studied by human scientists, not dismantled or surrendered." Another pause, then a curt nod. "Agreed. For now." The communication ended. The Vraxian ships began to pull back, maintaining a wary distance from the Retribution. "They'll be back," Reed said quietly. "With a larger fleet. This isn't over." "No," Miller agreed. "But now we're prepared. And we have the truth." He looked around at the ancient battleship that had survived centuries to deliver its warning. "The Retribution didn't just come back for revenge, Admiral. It came back to save us." Reed nodded slowly. "Perhaps that's the true Retribution. Not punishment for past wrongs, but prevention of future ones." He extended his hand to Miller. "Thank you, Captain, for believing when no one else would." As they shook hands, the main lights returned to full power throughout the ship, illuminating corridors that had been dark for 3 centuries. "Computer," Reed said, "begin revival protocols for senior staff. It's time to wake up my crew." He turned to Miller with determined eyes. "They've slept long enough, and humanity has been blind for too long." Outside the viewports, the stars seemed to shine brighter as the Retribution, no longer a myth but a very real guardian, prepared for its new mission in a time not its own, but desperately in need of its protection. The stars glowed like distant jewels against the black canvas of space. Captain James watched them from the bridge of the scout ship Vigilant as it moved slowly through the outer rim territories. "Sensors picking up something odd, Captain," said Officer Tom, his eyes fixed on the screen in front of him. "Energy readings unlike anything I've seen before." James walked over and looked at the readings. They showed a strange pulse, weak but steady, coming from Sector 7. This area was supposed to be empty. "How far?" he asked. "About 3 hours at full speed," Tom replied. James thought for a moment. Their orders were clear: patrol the border, report any findings, and return to base. Investigating strange signals wasn't part of the mission, but something about this reading made him curious. "Set course for the signal," James ordered, "but keep weapons ready, just in case." "Sir, Command ordered us to." "I know what Command ordered," James cut in. "But if this is a distress signal or something dangerous, we need to check it out." The Vigilant changed direction and sped toward the mysterious energy source. James felt a mix of excitement and worry. The Galactic Coalition had mapped most of this region, yet this signal was completely unknown. 3 hours later, the ship slowed near the source of the signal. "Visual coming up now," said Tom. The main screen showed a large object floating in space. It was a ship, but unlike any James had ever seen. Its hull was dark gray with faded markings. It was huge, almost 3 times the size of the Vigilant, with strange bulges and angles that made no sense to the eye. "What is that?" asked Lisa, the communications officer. "It looks like a warship," James said slowly, "but not one I recognize." Tom ran the ship through the database. "No matches found, sir. According to our records, this ship doesn't exist." "That's impossible," James replied. "Every ship built in the last 300 years is in that database." "Well, this one isn't," Tom confirmed. James ordered a closer scan. The results showed the ship was powered down but not damaged. It had no life signs on board. The hull markings were in an old Earth language. "I can make out a name," Lisa said, looking at the enhanced images. "Defiance." "Defiance?" James repeated. "Check the military records for any ship with that name." Lisa searched quickly. "Nothing, sir. According to our files, no military vessel called Defiance was ever built." James made a decision. "Prepare a boarding team. We need to see what's inside." An hour later, James led a small team across the space between the 2 ships. Engineer Marcus and Security Officer Ben followed closely behind. Their magnetic boots clanked against the hull of the mysterious vessel. "The airlock seems operational," Marcus said, examining the entry point. "I think I can get it open." After some work, the ancient door slid open with a hiss of pressure. The team turned on their lights and stepped inside. The air was stale but breathable. "Power levels are minimal," Marcus noted, "just enough to maintain basic systems and life support." They moved through dark corridors lined with technology that looked both old and strangely advanced. The ship's design made no sense. Some parts looked like they were from 200 years ago, while others seemed beyond current technology. "This layout doesn't match any standard military design," Ben observed. They reached what appeared to be the bridge. Marcus found a control panel that still had power and managed to turn on some lights. The room lit up dimly, revealing rows of stations and a large commander's chair in the center. "Let's see if we can access the ship's logs," James said. Marcus worked on the main console while the others explored the bridge. After several minutes, the screens flickered to life, showing data in an old format. "I got something," Marcus called. According to these logs, this ship was built in a secret facility on Earth over 200 years ago, during the Dark Decade. The Dark Decade was a time of chaos when many records were lost during the Great Data Crash. It was a period shrouded in mystery. "The logs say the Defiance was part of a special project," Marcus continued, reading the screen. "It was designed to counter an alien threat that intelligence predicted would attack Earth. But the threat never came. So they built this ship and then what? Just abandoned it out here?" Lisa asked over the comm link from the Vigilant. "Not exactly," Marcus replied. "According to this, the Defiance was hidden away as a contingency plan. A last resort weapon if humanity ever faced extinction." James looked around the bridge with new understanding. "This isn't just a warship. It's a lifeboat and a weapon combined. Captain, Tom's urgent voice came through the comm. We're picking up multiple ships entering the sector. A lot of them. Can you identify? James asked. Not yet, but they're moving in formation. Definitely military. James turned to his team. We need to get back to the Vigilant. Before they could move, Marcus called out, Wait, there's more in the logs. This ship has technology that was experimental even for its time. Weapons and defense systems unlike anything we have today. We don't have time for this, James said. We need tow. An alarm blared through their comms. Lysa's voice cut in. Captain, they're Krell vessels. A full battle group headed straight for us. Everyone froze. The Krell were an aggressive species that had fought humans before. The current peace was fragile at best. They're hailing us, Lysa added. Tell them we're on a routine patrol and discovered an abandoned vessel, James ordered. We'll return to our territory immediately. As the team hurried back through the corridors toward the airlock, a new alarm sounded from within the Defiance itself. The lights around them suddenly brightened. Panels lit up along the walls. The ship was waking up. What did you do? James asked Marcus. Nothing, the engineer replied. It must be responding to the Krell presence. James's comm crackled again with Lysa's voice, now tense with fear. Captain, the Krell are demanding we surrender what they're calling the illegal human warship immediately. Their weapons are powering up. As they reached the airlock, a smooth artificial voice spoke from all around them. External threat detected. Defense protocols initializing. Welcome aboard the UES Defiance, humanity's guardian. I am Atlas, the ship's artificial intelligence. Please identify yourselves. The dead ship wasn't dead anymore, and a fleet of Krell warships was coming straight toward them. I repeat, I am Atlas, the artificial intelligence of the UES Defiance, the calm voice said again. Please identify yourselves. Captain James looked at Marcus and Ben. Their faces showed the same shock he felt. I am Captain James of the Galactic Coalition scout ship Vigilant, he finally replied. We found your ship abandoned and came to investigate. Understood, Captain, Atlas responded. My systems indicate your vessel is under threat. The approaching ships match Krell attack patterns in my database. James's comm unit buzzed. Captain, Lysa's voice was urgent. The Krell commander is demanding to speak with you directly. He seems very angry about this ship. James turned to Marcus. What's happening with this Why did it activate now? Marcus studied a nearby console. From what I can tell, it was in standby mode. The ship has passive sensors that must have detected the Krell ships and triggered its defense protocols. Captain, we need to return to the Vigilant, Ben urged. Agreed. Atlas, we're leaving now. Please deactivate your systems. I cannot comply, Captain, Atlas replied. My core programming requires me to remain operational when a threat is detected. The Krell fleet represents a Class 1 threat to human personnel. Before James could argue, Lysa's voice came through again. Captain, the Krell are getting impatient. Their weapons are fully charged. Patch them through, James ordered. The voice that came next was deep and harsh. This is Admiral Vox of the Krell Defense Force. You have illegally salvaged a restricted weapon. Surrender the vessel immediately or face destruction. James was confused. Admiral, we only discovered this ship hours ago. We have no claim on it. Do not play games, human, Vox growled. Our records show this vessel destroyed an entire Krell battle group 60 years ago before disappearing. We have searched for it ever since. James looked around the bridge of the Defiance with new understanding. This ship had fought before. Admiral, we had no knowledge of this ship's history. I suggest we both withdraw and let our governments discuss this matter. Unacceptable, came the reply. That vessel must be destroyed. It is too dangerous to exist. The communication cut off abruptly. Marcus's tablet beeped with an alert. They're targeting the Vigilant. he shouted. Through the viewport, James watched in horror as bright beams of energy shot from the lead Krell ship toward their small scout vessel. The Vigilant tried to evade, but it was too slow. The beams struck it directly. "No!" James yelled as the Vigilant broke apart in a flash of light and debris. "Life pod signals detected," Atlas announced. 4 pods successfully launched from your vessel." James felt relief wash over him. The crew had escaped. "Can you retrieve those pods?" he asked Atlas. "Affirmative." Activating retrieval systems. The deck beneath them hummed as the Defiance came fully to life. Lights brightened throughout the ship. On a nearby screen, James watched as mechanical arms extended from the hull, carefully collecting the small escape pods. "Pods secured," Atlas reported. "Crew members are unharmed and being brought to the main hangar bay." Marcus was studying the ship's systems with growing amazement. "Captain, you need to see this. The ship's defenses are unlike anything I've ever seen, and they're all coming online." The screens around them showed the Defiance transforming. Panels shifted on the outer hull, revealing weapon ports and defense systems. The ship's energy readings climbed rapidly. "Alert," Atlas announced. "Krell vessels are surrounding us. They are preparing a coordinated attack." "Can this ship defend itself?" James asked. The Defiance was designed to face threats far beyond current Krell capabilities, Atlas replied. "However, after 2 centuries of dormancy, I can only guarantee 47% operational capacity." "That doesn't sound promising," Ben muttered. The ship shuddered as the first Krell shots hit its shields. "Shield integrity at 98%, Atlas reported calmly. "Minimal impact." James and his team made their way to the hangar bay where they found Lisa and the remaining crew from the Vigilant. They looked scared but unhurt. "What's happening?" Lisa asked as they entered. "This ship is like nothing I've ever seen." "It's an ancient defense vessel," James explained quickly. "And the Krell are terrified of it." Another impact rocked the ship. "We need to get to the bridge," James decided. "If we're going to survive this, we need to understand what this ship can do." As they hurried through the corridors, the Defiance continued to transform around them. Walls shifted, creating new pathways. Systems that had been dormant for centuries hummed to life. When they reached the bridge, they found it completely changed. The dim, dusty room they had explored earlier was now bright and active. Holographic displays showed the positions of the Krell ships surrounding them. "Welcome back, Captain," Atlas greeted them. "I have completed my initial system checks. The Krell fleet consists of 1 command ship, 6 battle cruisers, and 24 support vessels. That's an entire war fleet," Lisa whispered. "Why are they so afraid of this one ship?" James wondered aloud. "I can answer that," Atlas replied. 63 years ago, the Defiance was discovered by a Krell exploration team who attempted to capture it. The ship's automated defenses activated and destroyed their forces before returning to dormancy. "So the legend of a human ghost ship that destroyed a Krell fleet was real," Marcus said. "And now they want to make sure it never happens again," James added. The largest Krell ship moved closer, its weapons glowing with power. "They're preparing to fire their main cannon," Atlas announced. "Recommended action. Activate countermeasures." "What countermeasures?" James asked. "The Defiance possesses dimensional phase shifting technology. We can temporarily move the ship partially out of normal space, allowing enemy fire to pass through harmlessly." James looked at his frightened crew, then at the approaching Krell fleet. They had no choice. "Do it," he ordered. "Initiating phase shift," Atlas replied. The bridge view shimmered slightly as the Krell fired their main weapon. The beam of energy, powerful enough to destroy a small moon, shot directly toward them and passed right through the ship. "Phase shift successful," Atlas reported. "No damage sustained." On the screens, they could see the confusion on the Krell ships as their most powerful weapon had no effect. "Captain," Atlas said, I should inform you that the Defiance was designed not just to defend, but to fight. Weapons systems are online and awaiting your command. James looked at the holographic display, showing 31 Krell warships surrounding one ancient human vessel that shouldn't exist. "Show me what this ship can do," he said quietly. The bridge of the Defiance hummed with energy as screens displayed the surrounding Krell fleet. The alien vessels circled cautiously after witnessing their main weapon pass harmlessly through the ship. "They're confused," Lisa said, watching the movement of the enemy ships. "They don't know what to do next." At last, James asked, "What weapons does this ship have?" "The Defiance is equipped with multiple defense and attack systems," the AI responded. "Primary weapons include gravity pulse cannons, particle beam arrays, and the Horizon Array." "I don't recognize any of those weapon types," Marcus said, his eyes wide. "They were experimental when this ship was built," Atlas explained. "The technology was never shared widely due to its destructive potential." A warning flashed across the main screen. The Krell ships were moving into attack formation. "They're going to try a coordinated attack," Ben observed. "Hit us from all sides at once." "Atlas, can we maintain the phase shift to protect ourselves?" James asked. "Negative, Captain. The phase shift can only be maintained for short periods. It requires significant power and creates stress on the hull structure." James thought quickly. "Then we need to show them we can fight back. Target the nearest ship with the least destructive weapon we have. I want to disable, not destroy." "Understood. Targeting gravity pulse cannon at minimum power." On the screen, they watched as a strange ripple emerged from the Defiance and shot toward one of the smaller Krell ships. When it hit, the alien vessel didn't explode. Instead, it began to tumble slowly, as if caught in an invisible current. "What happened to it?" Lisa asked. "The gravity pulse temporarily disrupted their artificial gravity and stabilization systems," Atlas explained. "The ship is intact but unable to maintain position or targeting." "Send a message to the Krell commander," James ordered. "Tell him we don't want to fight but will defend ourselves if attacked." While Lisa worked on the communication, Marcus explored more of the ship's database. "Captain, I found something interesting," he called. According to these files, the Defiance was built by someone named Thomas Reed. He was a brilliant engineer who worked during the Dark Decade. "What else does it say about him?" James asked, joining Marcus at the console. Reed believed humanity would face extinction-level threats from other species. He designed this ship to evolve its own technology over time. The Defiance isn't just a warship, it's a learning system. "That explains why the Krell are so afraid of it," James said, "if it can adapt and improve itself." "They're responding to our message," Lisa interrupted. Admiral Vox's harsh voice filled the bridge. "Your demonstration is noted, human, but it changes nothing. That vessel has technology forbidden by the Galactic Treaty. It must be surrendered or destroyed." "The Defiance predates any treaty," James replied. "And we only activated its defensive capabilities after you destroyed our scout ship." "You leave us no choice," Vox growled. "Prepare to be annihilated." The communication ended. On the screens, the Krell ships began to move in perfect formation. "Captain," Atlas announced, "I have detected communication to other Krell forces. They are calling for reinforcements." James turned to his crew. "We need to know more about this ship's capabilities if we're going to survive." "I can help with that," said a new voice. Everyone turned to see a holographic figure standing in the center of the bridge. It was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes. "Thomas Reed," Marcus whispered. The hologram nodded. "A recording of him, at least. I am a memory program designed to activate when the ship faces its first real battle. I see that time has come. We need to know why the Krell fear this ship so much," James said to the hologram. "The Defiance was built with one purpose, to ensure humanity's survival," Reed's image explained. "I designed it with systems that could adapt to any threat. The ship learns from each attack and improves its defenses." "But why do the Krell know about it?" Lisa asked. 60 years ago, a prototype of this vessel was discovered by Krell forces, Reed's hologram explained. They attempted to capture it, but the automated defenses responded. The prototype destroyed their attack force before disappearing again. That matches what HFY told us, James said. The Krell believe humans have been secretly building more ships like this. Reed continued. They fear an armada of vessels with this technology would make humans the dominant species in the galaxy. Are there more ships like this? Ben asked. The hologram smiled mysteriously. That information is classified, even from this recording. A warning alarm blared through the ship. The Krell are attacking, Atlas announced. Multiple energy signatures detected from all vessels. Can we use the phase shift again? James asked urgently. Not yet, Atlas replied. Systems are still recharging. Then what options do we have? The adaptive armor can absorb some of the energy, Reed's hologram suggested. Atlas, activate the absorption grid. Activating now. The ship shuddered as dozens of energy beams struck it simultaneously. The lights flickered, but the shields held. Shield integrity at 72%. Atlas reported. Damage minimal. Adaptive systems are analyzing attack patterns. What does that mean? Lisa asked. The ship is learning, Reed's hologram explained. Each time it's attacked, it adjusts its defenses to be more effective against that specific weapon. On the screens, they could see the Krell preparing for another volley. We can't just keep taking hits, James said. We need to show them we're serious. The particle beam array is now charged, Atlas announced. Target their lead ship's weapon systems, only, James ordered. Disable, don't destroy. A bright blue beam shot from the Defiance and struck the largest Krell vessel precisely where its main cannon was mounted. The weapon exploded in a shower of sparks. Direct hit, Atlas confirmed. Their primary weapon is offline. The Krell ships adjusted their formation, spreading out to surround the Defiance more completely. They're calling in the reinforcements, Lisa reported, listening to intercepted communications. At least 20 more ships on the way. We can't fight an entire Krell armada, Ben said. Reed's hologram looked at James with serious eyes. Captain, this ship has one more system that might help. The Horizon Array. Atlas mentioned that before. What is it? It's the most powerful weapon ever created by humans, Reed explained. It manipulates space-time itself, creating a temporary distortion that can disable multiple ships at once. That sounds dangerous, James said. It is, Reed admitted, but it might be our only option against these numbers. Before James could respond, a new wave of attacks hit the ship. This time, the impact was stronger. Shield integrity at 45%. Atlas reported. The Krell have adjusted their weapons to counter our defenses. They're learning to, Marcus realized. James looked at the screens showing more Krell ships arriving by the minute. They were running out of time and options. How long until the Horizon Array is ready? He asked quietly. It can be prepared in 3 minutes, Atlas replied. Do it, James ordered, but target it carefully. I want to disable their ships, not destroy them. As Atlas began the activation sequence, Reed's hologram regarded James with approval. You understand the purpose of the Defiance, he said, not to conquer, but to protect. I understand that having power doesn't mean you should use it to destroy, James replied, even when faced with an enemy that would destroy you. The ship hummed with building energy as the Horizon Array prepared to fire. The bridge of the Defiance vibrated as energy built up throughout the ship. On the screens, the Krell fleet had grown to over 50 vessels, all positioned to attack. Horizon Array at 70% charge, Atlas announced. 2 minutes until ready. They're moving into final attack position, Ben warned, watching the enemy ships. James made a decision. Atlas, open a channel to Admiral Vox. Channel open, Captain. Admiral Vox, this is Captain James. I'm asking you one last time to stand down. We have activated a weapon system that could disable your entire fleet. We don't want to use it." There was a long pause before the Admiral responded. "You bluff, human," Vox growled. "No single ship has such capability." "The Defiance is not an ordinary ship," James replied. "You know that, or you wouldn't have brought an entire armada to destroy it." Another pause. Then, "You have 1 minute to surrender the vessel." The communication ended. "They're not going to back down," Lisa said quietly. "Then we need to show them we're serious," James decided. "Atlas, when the Horizon Array is ready, target the empty space between the Krell ships. I want to show them what it can do without harming anyone." "Understood, Captain." Marcus had been studying the ship's systems on a Psi console. He looked up with concern. "Captain, I found something interesting about the ship's power core. It's using a controlled singularity, basically a contained black hole, as its power source." "A black hole?" Ben asked in disbelief. "Inside the ship. It's tiny and completely contained," Marcus explained. "But it explains how the ship can generate so much power for its weapons and defenses." "Is it stable?" James asked. "According to these readings, yes, but using the Horizon Array will draw heavily from it." The ship shook violently as a new wave of Krell attacks hit the shields. "Shield integrity at 31%, Atlas reported. "Critical failure possible if attacks continue." "Horizon Array at 95% charge," Reed's hologram announced. "Almost ready." James looked at the tactical display. The Krell ships had formed a perfect circle around them, preparing for what they hoped would be the final blow. "As soon as the array is ready, fire at the coordinates I specified," James ordered. "Understood," Atlas replied. "Horizon Array fully charged. Targeting empty space at the center of the Krell formation. Fire." For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, in the space between the Krell ships, a strange distortion appeared. It looked like a ripple in water, but in space itself. The ripple grew quickly, expanding outward. When it reached the first line of Krell ships, they didn't explode or break apart. Instead, their lights flickered and went dark. Ship after ship lost power as the distortion wave passed through them. "What's happening to them?" Lisa asked. "The Horizon Array creates a temporary disruption in space-time," Reed's hologram explained. "It affects electrical systems and power generation, but doesn't harm organic life." On the screens, they could see over 20 Krell ships now floating powerless in space. "Open a channel to Admiral Vox again," James ordered. His ship was affected by the array. Atlas reported. "They have limited communications only." "Can they hear me?" "Yes, Captain." "Admiral Vox, as you can see, we disabled nearly half your fleet without destroying a single ship. We don't want this fight. Stand down now, and we can talk." The response was immediate and angry. "This proves you are too dangerous to exist. All remaining ships, attack with everything you have." The remaining Krell vessels, including Vox's command ship, which had partially recovered, fired all their weapons simultaneously. "Brace for impact," James shouted. The Defiance shook violently as multiple energy beams struck it from all directions. Panels exploded on the bridge, and the crew was thrown to the floor. "Shield failure," Atlas reported, the AI's voice now showing signs of strain. "Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. Emergency containment activated." "Casualties?" James asked, picking himself up from the floor. None reported. All areas were automated or unoccupied. James looked at the damage reports. The ship had taken a serious hit, but it was still functional. "Atlas, what offensive capabilities do we still have?" "The Horizon Array requires 1 hour to recharge. Gravity pulse cannons are offline. Particle beam arrays at 50% capacity. And what about our defenses?" "The adaptive armor is learning from the attack patterns. Effectiveness will increase by approximately 28% against similar attacks." Reed's hologram flickered unstably. "Captain, there's something else you should know. The Defiance has one more system, The Aegis Protocol. What does it do? James asked. It links the ship's adaptive systems directly to the attack patterns of the enemy. Every shot they fire actually makes the ship stronger against that specific weapon. Can we activate it? It's already happening, Reed said with a small smile. It's been happening since the first attack. The Defiance was designed to become more powerful the longer it fights. On the screens, they could see the Krell preparing for another attack. They're changing their weapon frequencies, Atlas reported, attempting to find a weakness in our defenses. Let them try, Marcus said with growing confidence. If what Reed says is true, each attack just makes us stronger. The next wave hit, but this time the impact was noticeably less severe. Shield integrity holding at 25%, Atlas announced. Adaptive systems functioning correctly. James watched as the Krell ships adjusted position again. They were becoming desperate. Captain, Lisa called out. I'm intercepting communications between Admiral Vox and the Krell High Command. They're ordering him to destroy us at any cost. They're afraid of what this ship represents. They should be, Ben said. One ship taking on an entire fleet and winning. That's impossible. Not impossible, Reed's hologram corrected. Just unlikely. And the Defiance was built for the unlikely scenario. Another attack came. And again, the ship withstood it better than the last. Particle beam arrays recharge, Atlas reported. Awaiting your orders, Captain. James studied the tactical display. The remaining Krell ships were clustered around Vox's command vessel. Target their engines, he ordered. Let's stop them from maneuvering, but leave their life support intact. The Defiance fired precise beams that struck each Krell ship exactly where their engines were located. One by one, they lost the ability to move, floating helplessly in space. All enemy vessels immobilized, Atlas confirmed. A stunned silence fell over the bridge. They had done the impossible. One ship had effectively defeated an entire fleet. Open a channel to Admiral Vox, James said quietly. The Admiral's face appeared on screen, his alien features twisted with rage. You see now why your people feared this ship, James told him. But also why your fear was misplaced. We could have destroyed your entire fleet, but we chose not to. You will not be so merciful next time, Vox snarled. There doesn't have to be a next time, James replied. This ends here, with both sides still alive. As James ended the communication, Reed's hologram looked at him with approval. You used the ship exactly as I intended, he said. Not as a weapon of destruction, but as a shield for peace. What do we do now? Lisa asked. The Krell will never let us keep this ship. James looked around at his crew, then at the screen showing the disabled Krell fleet. I have an idea, he said, but it's going to be risky. Captain James looked at his crew gathered on the bridge of the Defiance. They had just achieved the impossible, defeating an entire Krell fleet without destroying a single ship. But James knew this was only the beginning. The Krell will send more ships, he said. And next time, they won't hold back. So what's your plan? Lisa asked. James turned to the hologram of Thomas Reed. You mentioned the ship has other capabilities we haven't used yet. What about movement? Can it travel faster than our standard ships? Reed smiled. The Defiance has a dimensional jump drive. It doesn't just move through space. It can temporarily shift between dimensions, appearing anywhere in the galaxy almost instantly. So we can escape? Ben asked hopefully. We could, James replied. But that wouldn't solve the problem. The Krell would keep hunting this ship forever. Marcus, who had been studying the ship's data systems, looked up suddenly. Captain, I think I found something interesting. I've been analyzing the Krell communications Lisa intercepted. What did you find? James asked. Their messages contain references to something called the human ascendancy. It seems their real fear isn't just this ship. It's the belief that humans are destined to become the dominant species in the galaxy. That's why they want to destroy the Defiance so badly, Lisa realized. They see it as proof of superior human technology. James thought for a moment. Then we need to change their perspective. Atlas, is the jump drive operational? Yes, Captain. The dimensional jump system is at full capacity. How precise can it be? The Defiance can emerge at exact coordinates with 99.8% accuracy. James smiled. Perfect. I want you to calculate a jump that will place us directly in the middle of the Krell command ships, within visual range, but not close enough to threaten them. That's incredibly risky, Ben warned. We'd be surrounded. That's exactly the point, James replied. Atlas, how long until Krell reinforcements arrive? Based on intercepted communications, approximately 20 minutes. Then we have 20 minutes to prepare. Marcus, I need you to compile all the data we have on the Krell communications. Lisa, prepare a message to be sent to all Krell ships simultaneously. As the crew worked frantically, Reed's hologram approached James. You're taking a considerable risk, Captain, he said. Sometimes the only way to end a fight is to face your enemy directly, James replied. This ship was built to protect humanity. I think the best protection now is understanding. 15 minutes later, everything was ready. The crew gathered on the bridge, tension filling the air. Jump drive charged and ready, Atlas announced. Coordinates locked on Krell command group. Everyone ready? James asked, looking at his crew. They nodded nervously. Execute jump. The view on the screens blurred, and for a brief moment, everyone felt a strange sensation, as if they existed in multiple places at once. Then reality snapped back into focus. The Defiance had appeared in the middle of a group of 7 large Krell vessels, the command ships of their fleet. Alarms immediately sounded as the Krell detected their presence. We're being targeted by all ships, Atlas reported. They are charging weapons. Open all channels, James ordered. I want every Krell officer to hear this. Lisa activated the communication system. Channel open, Captain. James took a deep breath. This is Captain James of the human vessel Defiance. I'm speaking to all Krell ships in your high command. We could have escaped. Instead, we've come directly to you with our weapons powered down. On the screens, they could see Krell ships moving into attack positions. We've analyzed your communications, James continued. We understand your real fear, that humans will become the dominant species in the galaxy. That's why you want to destroy this ship so badly. Admiral Vox's voice came through the speakers. Your actions prove our concerns. One vessel defeating an entire fleet is unprecedented, and yet we disabled your ships without destroying them. James countered. We had the power to annihilate your fleet but chose not to. That's the part you're missing. James nodded to Marcus, who sent the compiled data to the Krell ships. We're sending you all our data on this vessel. The Defiance was built centuries ago as a last resort against extinction. It was never meant to conquer or dominate. There was silence from the Krell ships. James continued. I propose a new solution. This ship doesn't belong to us or to you. It's a relic of history. Let it be studied by both our species. Let its technology be used for peaceful purposes under joint oversight. Impossible, Vox replied. Such technology cannot be shared. It's already being shared, James said calmly. Right now, as we speak. On the screens, a new group of ships appeared. The Krell reinforcements had arrived. There were dozens of them, surrounding the Defiance completely. This is your final warning, Vox threatened. Surrender the vessel or be destroyed. Before James could respond, a new voice joined the communication, older and more authoritative. Admiral Vox, stand down immediately. High Commander. Vox sounded shocked. This human vessel has shown both tremendous power and tremendous restraint, the High Commander interrupted. Our sensors confirm their weapons are inactive despite being surrounded by our fleet. Their actions merit consideration. The bridge crew exchanged hopeful glances. Captain James, the High Commander, addressed him directly. Your proposal is unexpected. Joint study of such a vessel would be unprecedented. Sometimes unprecedented actions lead to unprecedented peace, James replied. There was a long pause before the High Commander spoke again. We will consider your proposal. Until then, no hostile action will be taken against your vessel. As the communication ended, the crew let out a collective breath of relief. Did that really just work? Ben asked in disbelief. Not completely, James cautioned. But it's a start. Reed's hologram looked at James with approval. You found a third option, neither running nor fighting, but understanding. The Defiance was built to save humanity, James said. Today, maybe it saved us from ourselves by showing there's always another way. As the tension on the bridge eased, Atlas made an announcement. Captain, I have detected a signal activation in the ship's deep communication system. What does that mean? James asked. Reed's hologram smiled mysteriously. It means the Defiance is not alone. There are others like it throughout the galaxy, waiting and watching. And now they know that humans have chosen wisdom over power. Are there really more ships like this? Lisa asked. That information remains classified, Reed replied. But I will say this. The Defiance was never meant to be humanity's sword. It was meant to be our shield until we learned we didn't need either. James looked out at the Krull ships now holding position around them. What had begun as a battle had transformed into the first step toward a new understanding between species. So what happens now? Ben asked. Now, James said with a small smile, we start talking instead of fighting. And that's always been the hardest part. The Defiance floated peacefully among the Krull ships, no longer a mysterious threat, but a bridge between two civilizations that had nearly destroyed each other out of fear. The warship that shouldn't exist had done the impossible twice, first by defeating a fleet, and then by creating peace.